I'm Richard Pyatt. This is Pest PROspectives, the official podcast from Pest Pros of Michigan. We talk about bugs and wildlife and lots of things, perhaps that maybe weren't obvious at first, that they could be a signal to maybe a wildlife problem or a pest problem in general. Tony Sorrentino's back from Pest Pros of Michigan, and we have a special guest today, Daine Patton from Bats to Rats Wildlife Control. That about covers it, doesn't it, Daine?
That's right.
So our intent today is to give folks a couple of ideas about things you might see around your property, your business, that could signal bigger problems. If we were to just name a few things that you've seen that didn't look like much, but sure turned into something bigger, what would they be?
We've been in attic spaces where the people literally had nothing. There was nothing visible from the outside, from the ground level. There was an access point along the ridge vent on the spine of the roof. And there was a maternal colony of bats there. There was over 400 bats that were living and roosting in the attic space. What caused them to call us to come out was a bat-human interaction where a juvenile bat had gotten into the living space because it wasn't sure how to get in and out. The whole exclusion, ridge vent or ridge guard, and sanitation bioremediation of the attic space was $13,000.
So they can really exist in that vast number, and no one hears a sound. No one ever heard any kind or saw any kind of signal.
Most people don't go up in their attic spaces. I know we've lived at our house for 5 or 6 years now. I've never been in my own attic.
I guess you think that you're going to hear some noise or something's going to happen that's going to tip you off. Does this sound unusual to you, Daine? Have you seen this before? A bat colony and no idea it's there?
Oh yeah, we see this stuff every single day in the field that we do. You know, actually, just 2 weeks ago, I remember getting a call, and it was somebody that's lived in their house since 1993, never been in their attic space since they've lived there. You know, when they moved in 30 some years ago, they were a bit younger, but now they're an older couple, and they're like, hey. We just want somebody to take a look. They've had so much mouse activity. All of the insulation was completely matted down. There was tunnels, runways throughout all the insulation. I went down into the basement. There's 3 separate crawl spaces plus a full basement, and it was just littered with rodent activity. And they're just in areas that these people weren't going in or never had the need to go in any longer. And there's been probably 20 years of rodent activity that they just didn't realize. Every once in a while, they would catch a mouse in the fall, and most customers that we have, they think that's normal. Little did they know they had years and years worth of rodent activity, and we need to bring the insulation team out, the exclusion team out. We're going to have to bait and trap and reduce population numbers. So it's going to be a huge project, and it was just because they didn't ever go and take a look at these things.
You know, I latched onto something you said there. They saw a mouse occasionally and dealt with it and thought that was normal. Is that typical thinking?
I hear it all the time. You know, people they'll say, "Oh yeah, every fall, because we live in Nebraska, so we have we're an agricultural state, and every time that corn's harvested in the fall, there's always an influx of rodent activity, and people think, oh, it's just normal. Come when it cools down in the harvest and that, I catch a couple mice and then we let it go. But what we try to do is educate our customers and let them know that the reason that they're finding them is because there's some sort of weak point on the outside of the structure, a hole, gap, crevice that they're able to sneak themselves in, or they've just chewed a hole somewhere, and that's how they're coming in. And we provide them solutions to take care of those issues.
Tony, you probably heard that too. I catch a mouse occasionally, no big deal.
Michigan, we get 7 months of summertime, and in the springtime and when the weather really starts to turn bad, people will start calling in. Well, we usually see a couple in the fall. The mice are harboring inside of your home. And like Daine said, gaps, cracks, crevices, plumbing penetrations, corner posts, where the mice can climb all the way up to the soffits, and then they have access to the roof. So having these open entry points Plus, Daine spoke about sebum a few minutes ago. Sebum is the combination of body oils and micro droplets of urine and pheromones that they track on every entry point. And it's like a flashing neon light to these rodents when they come to repopulate the area, which inevitably is going to happen.
Yeah, I hope not. But right, you've made a point here. You've made a point here that this can happen under the radar for 30 years or something. This could happen. That is unbelievable. Do other ideas or other things you've seen come to mind that fall into this category? People live for years without knowing it.
Yeah, and the same thing I was just thinking about that we see quite a bit is air conditioner lines. When those lines are coming into the house, so often is that something simple that our listeners, our homeowners could take care of themselves, or that they could at least look out for. And we see it too often. We're walking around and that AC line has the plumber's putty around it, and whether it's been chewed off or it just dries up, cracks, falls off, stuff like that happens, and it's just a super highway for mice or rats to find their way into people's homes. So that's something that's small that gets overlooked way too often.
And we probably underestimate how flat they can make themselves and get into small places. So what's Tony, the most impressive, other than maybe bats, the most impressive thing you've seen, and maybe the most unbelievable thing that was a small entry point that turned into something big?
There was a grapefruit sized, so about 4.5, 5 inches hole in a gable vent. Ian pulled 15 raccoons out of this attic, and they were living there. The house was vacant, so there's no way you'd miss 15 raccoons.
This is no easy task, I presume, because they can be aggressive.
Yeah, and it was multiple trap sets over about a week of time to get everything out of there. There was mothers and juveniles, and they were all cohabitating. It was like I don't even know what the word. Daine, do you know what it's called for a group of raccoons? Isn't it like a bandit or something?
Yeah, something like that. But
yeah,
it's funny that you brought that up. 15's more than I had, but a couple years ago, between Christmas and New Year's, I caught 10 raccoons out of somebody's attic space, and it took me like 2 hours to find the hole on the house. There was so many raccoons up there, but it was a concrete tile roof, and the one hole that they found, they were getting underneath a tile, and you'd never know looking at it. But then we had to do our inspection, and it just took forever. It looked all over the places you normally think, and then here's a loose tile, and they're just going right underneath. 10 raccoons. It was like 2 every other day for a week.
Was that another of these under the radar things where you might not see it, but you also weren't hearing it?
Yeah, 100%. They were living in these people's attic spaces, and they just started seeing a stain coming through their ceiling. They didn't hear anything or anything like that. And this was a newer built home in a pretty nice area, so they had R63 insulation. There was so much insulation up there. And the raccoons, they were on top of it and just kind of patted it down, but it acts as a noise blocker for lots of people.
And it's nice and cushy for them.
Exactly.
Is there something in Michigan, Tony, that stands out in this category? Something sneaky in our state?
Southwest Michigan, flying squirrels and red squirrels. Flyers are notorious. They'll live in your house. We've had huge infestations with flying squirrels, and red squirrels are notorious for chewing wires and ruining insulation.
When you say flying squirrels, so it's a squirrel with wings? I mean, what do these look like?
They have a piece of skin that runs from their wrist, and then it's attached at their ankle, and so they're gliders. If they jump and spread their little arms out, they fly. Flying squirrel.
What about Nebraska, Daine? Got something special there?
Oh, I don't think that we have any kind of different wildlife than Michigan is going to have, because we have winters here too. So we don't get the exotic things like they do down south. But every once in a while we get some good snake calls, and those are always fun to deal with.
So what's the moral of this story? You might not realize that you have an infestation, number one, right? So what's the solution? A periodic inspection. Is that it?
100%. It seems like people that own homes, they don't necessarily maintain them as well as we used to. Also, we have a lot of storms. There's always new construction going on, and people are replacing roofs, and people are putting new siding on, stuff like that. And just walking around the outside of your house and making sure that your gutters are free and clear and water can flow through them, making sure that like your AC lines are sealed, making sure that vents have proper screening and cages on them, making sure your crawl space vents are caged and closed off, stuff like that, because it doesn't take much. It takes about a dime size hole for a bat to get in. If a mouse can fit its head in, chew a hole in, it fit its head, it can fit the rest of its body and its whole family inside there.
Unbelievable. We just got through talking about in our last episode about home inspections and pest inspections. Here's another reason to consider a pest inspection, the notion that it could be, I'm still lingering on this 30-year infestation that nobody knew about. That seems extreme, but the point is they could be there and you don't know. Do you run into this a lot, Tony? Somebody calls you about some weird thing and it's an infestation?
Mm-hmm. It happens more times than not where I'm hearing noises, whether it's scratching or chirping or thumping. If you're hearing noises, say something. That's a good starting point where we're going to come out and do an A to Z evaluation of your home from the ridge vent to the foundation line. And we're going to figure out what's going on and how we can help.
And when you do, if it reveals a problem, there's going to be a plan to sort that out. And then you're going to come back and check that again, right?
Yep. That's the warranty on all of our exclusion services, termite services too. But that we put a 1-year warranty on it. We'll do a whole house exclusion where there's so much going on that we need to wrap the foundation with metal to seal up all the gaps. Or if we have to build custom roof returns or do custom built color matched metal work for the roof, whatever it takes to get the job done.
So, Daine, do you ever go to a pest inspection and you find nothing? I mean, somebody's called you and there must be some kind of suspicion about something. But do you go and everything's fine and you say, see you in a year? Or what's the thought there?
Yeah, every once in a while that does happen, and it can happen from time to time. People are hearing noises, and like I said, they're not just going outside and walking around. They're calling an expert to come and take a look at it. And I've been plenty of times where it's just trees scraping against the roof. One time I had a kite that was stuck wrapped around somebody's chimney, and every time it would blow, it would start hitting this metal vent up there, and just. You see everything. I mean, I've been doing this for almost 20 years now, so every once in a while, but for the most part, those are few and far between. Mostly we find some sort of issue of rodents or bats or some sort of wildlife issue.
Yeah, and as you pointed out, taking care of a home is perhaps more difficult than it's been in prior generations. And so sometimes, the idea of spending a few bucks just to have a peace of mind or have at least a report and approach is not something people want to do. But boy, imagine a 30-year infestation like that example is the alternative sometimes. And that is tremendous. Tony, you've probably seen that too. The idea that somebody doesn't want to do this, but boy, when they do, they end up happy they did.
It's a differentiator. Daine said something that was important, and I wanted to add something. The people aren't keeping up on their houses as much, and the houses that they're building these days aren't built to the same standards with the same materials that they were built with 50 or 60 or 75 years ago. The wood that they use and the framing and structural timbers is not as dense. It's not as robust, and the builders that are building these houses these days they have a term for it. It's called builders gaps. And if it's less than if it looks good from 30 feet or 30 miles per hour, you're good to go. There's structural vulnerabilities that are left behind and then behind the siding. So then the homeowners don't know that either.
So how often, Daine, then should we have an inspection? If everything turns out okay and there's nothing to it, when do you want to go back again?
Yeah, I always recommend my customers do an annual inspection. If you're going to hire a professional, at least once a year, or if you have any exterior construction done to your house, it's always good to have somebody like myself or Tony, or there's so many great companies out there, come and do a walk around of your property and do a full inspection. For customers that we have secured their properties, we offer that extended warranty service. So we do the same thing like Tony. We give them a 1-year warranty, but then every year we offer to extend that warranty for a low price, much lower than what the actual job costs, but for us to come out and for our time and energy and effort to come out and do a full inspection. And we do the same thing like we do if it's a first appointment. We'll get the ladder out. We get up on the roof. We do the full roof line. We do, basement, crawl space inspections, underneath porches, all that kind of stuff. And it gives people peace of mind, because for most people, your home is the most valuable thing that you're going to spend your money on. And you'd much rather not be sharing it with wild animals that aren't part of your family.
At least the wild animals that aren't part of your family, right? Yeah, okay. No, that's great information, something for you to think about. And of course, if you're in Lincoln, Nebraska, Daine will be happy to talk to you about that, from bats to rats wildlife. And of course, Pest Pros of Michigan and Southwest Michigan, Tony and the team ready there as well. Check the show notes for the links through, and make contact if they sparked an inspiration for a question they're ready to answer. All right, gentlemen, thanks for what you do. We appreciate it, and we appreciate the insight.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks, Daine.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. Thank you, Richard. Super grateful to be here, and love you guys.
Don't forget, subscribe where you get podcasts and keep track of Pest PROspectives.